This is CAC News with me, Dan Whitell.
Tonight, Blink 182 replaced Frank Ocean in last-minute Coachella lineup change. AI music. Is this the beginning of the rise of the machines? And we take a look at some of the recent album releases so far this year. CAC News. Current and critical music news from the producers of the Cacophony Sessions Podcast. We're here to discuss more music-related news. It's myself and Tom this week on CAC News. What's been going on in music? We've had Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival in California from the 14th to the 16th and the 21st to the 23rd of April, so 2 weekends there. There's been some controversy. We'll start off by discussing Frank Ocean. I don't know, Tom, if you've seen his performance from the first weekend, but I don't really know if you can call it a performance.
No, it's really weird. I just didn't understand what he's trying to do.
He was just vibing to his own music.
Yeah, it's the Kanye West with a laptop approach to performance. And Frank Ocean is very good on record. And apparently he's good live. But if you only watch this, you'd wonder what on earth the fuss was about.
Yeah, because if you look at his discography, the first mixtape is Nostalgia Ultra, and then you've got Channel Orange, which I love. Probably my favourite record of 2012. Pyramids is an undeniable banger. And then you've got Blonde, which I'm not too keen on. It's a very difficult listen. It doesn't form full songs like Channel Orange. It's more snippets of acoustic ideas, and it's more of an emotional tale from start to finish. It never really grabbed me, but I can understand why it is so popular. But his discography is seen as one of the best in modern times, up there with Kendrick Lamar and Kanye West up until recent years. And you watch this and you think, this is not a remarkable artist. This is not somebody who everybody's looking at as somebody who's an innovator of our times, because he is just on stage like a fan, bopping around to his own backing tracks, and there's nothing spectacular. It's not even that it's not spectacular, it's not even interesting.
No, you realised it was going to be a bit shit when they cancelled the YouTube stream before it went on. He's not going to win over any new fans with that set. I really want to say, there's a phrase that pops into my head. I want to say it, and then it sounds like a real old fart thing to say. And it's not 100% true, because actually, every now and then I will see a hip-hop act live that are brilliant. But there's something about hip-hop doesn't seem to translate very well to festival stages. Jay-Z at Glastonbury, all right. Stormzy at Glastonbury, all right.
I thought he was quite good.
Yeah, but you compare that to like rock bands in full swing at festivals, it just doesn't work in the same way. Coachella's gone down this rabbit hole for the last 15, 20 years of diversifying. And some of the acts they put on are not really designed for festival stages, or certainly not at the point in their career they're performing. Look at Billie Eilish in 2017. By her own admission, it was not a great performance. Everyone thought Damon Albarn was her dad. Wasn't a great performance. Now, she's grown into it. I like the set at Glastonbury. That was great, but it just seems a bit weird. And the highlight of Snoop Dogg and Dre's set was the hologram of Tupac.
Yeah. Maybe it comes down to personal taste, though.
Yeah, I think so. Don't get me wrong, if you're a huge hip-hop fan, you'll probably really enjoy it. But as somebody, and if you're a fan of the artist, like, if you go and see an artist you love live, it doesn't matter if their performance is awful. I've been to see artists who've literally just stood there with a guitar, and I've enjoyed it because it's my favourite artists. I went to see Emma Reese Rundle play at Arctangent last year, and it was her sat at a piano only playing stuff off her acoustic album. She's not going to win over any new fans by doing that, but I loved it because I enjoyed the album and I enjoyed seeing it perform live in the manner in which she intended. But I struggle to see, as a sort of neutral observer who hip-hop is not really my thing, I struggle with hip-hop unless they put a stage show on. I know Beyonce isn't hip-hop, like the stage show she put on in 2018, that's going to win you over because it's a spectacle.
Yeah, the more popular the artist is, the higher the production value will be, and therefore you're likely to get a more accessible set for everybody. But it is largely there for hip-hop diehards and the fans of said artists, but they are capable of doing great shows. I watched Pusha T. He did a set, and as his setup, I think he had the instructions to make crack cocaine on the screens behind him. He's playing into his coke dealer persona that he's got, and he's got the swagger to carry it off, and good songs, so it can work. I do think that it's not necessarily going to be a bad set just because it's a hip-hop act.
No, there's some that I've liked, but it's when they put on a show, and Frank Ocean was a headliner without a show.
Yeah, but he played the first weekend, and then the second weekend he did cancel. The official line is due to an injured ankle, although I can't see how that would have affected his performance in the way it did for the first weekend. But the second weekend he was actually replaced by Blink-182,
who aren't without a little bit of controversy of their own. Essentially, people are accusing them of using auto-tune and are really pissed about it.
You can tell that Tom DeLonge's got auto-tune on his vocals, so I don't think that's particularly controversial, because it's clear to see.
Yeah, I think it annoyed a lot of the fans. The Blink-182 coming back together with the not original but original big lineup, as it were, is quite a big deal, because I know that Tom's used auto-tune with Angels and Airwaves live, apparently. The auto-tune had a little bit of a wobbly on, what's it called, Friend Date or something like that?
First Date.
Yeah, the auto-tune went a bit awry.
I didn't hear that particular song. I heard a few of them. I heard What's My Age Again, which is mainly Mark Hoppus on vocals anyway. And to be fair, he sounds like he did in 999. He sings in a lower octave anyway. He's never really been one to stretch for a note. But Tom DeLonge has changed his vocal style to try and sing more like he did when he was in Angels and Airwaves. And the auto-tune is required to make that happen, and the songs don't sound right. I listened to one of my favourites. It's not one of their most popular songs because it's not really pop punk, but I love I Miss You. I think it's a great song.
I enjoy that one as well.
Their version of it from Coachella this year, the vocals don't sound quite right, and it's frustrating because you want him to do the silly cadence that he's got, because it suits the song, the "Where are you?" But he doesn't sing it like that anymore, and it takes away from the impact of the song, because the crowd are singing it like he used to sing it, and he's not singing along with that version anymore. It sounds a bit odd. And this is largely a production thing for most festivals, but I think that the drums sounded a bit flat, and acoustics wise it didn't sound amazing. But as I say, it never really does at these mainstream festivals. It's more about being there in the atmosphere than the actual sound.
Yeah, I remember going to Download 2019 and seeing Slipknot ending up in the Circle Pit, feeling like an old man afterwards. And the only thing I'm thinking in the Circle Pit is, I remember these songs. How do these 18-year-olds know what they are? They weren't even born when it came out. Followed by, oh my God, the sound is appalling. It just sounds like somebody screaming over oil drums being whacked, which is basically what it is, because they've got the guys playing like whatever they are, oil drums or jerry cans or something, and that just overpowers everything. It is possible to get sound really good at festivals, and even at Coachella. Look at Daft Punk in 2006, Bjork in 2007. Bjork played again this year, but I haven't caught her set yet.
I haven't caught that, no.
Apparently she played this year.
I always wonder with Coachella, would I rather go to Coachella or would I rather go to Glastonbury?
Neither, Reading. Actually, weirdly, I haven't liked the Reading lineup since about 2012. I think my favourite festivals are festivals which have a coherent thread to the listening experience. So, for example, All Tomorrow's Parties used to be a festival at Minehead Butlins, right? And they'd pick a band who would curate it. Like one year, I think, was it Shellac curated? And they pick artists with a specific thread in mind for the festival. And those lineups, for me, work loads better because there's some thread between the acts you're going to see. It's not just throw a load of random shit on stages, because there's no difference to just sticking my Spotify on a random. The curated festivals generally are better, where somebody has thought about the running order on the stage in terms of a sonic experience, not who's the biggest band they get to go last. You know, although they still have to have the biggest bands on at the top. But festivals like 2000 Trees and Arctangent, for example, there's a thread in each stage. The genre is fairly similar and it's been thought about a little bit. Whereas just having a rock stage and a hip-hop stage and whatever, and throwing a load of acts that have nothing in common, just doesn't work for me.
Coachella seems to be quite guilty of doing that, especially when you consider that they replaced Frank Ocean with Blink-182.
I'm sure it's a great experience, but I just want All Tomorrow's Parties to come back. It was the greatest festival. You look at some of those lineups, there's loads of stuff you haven't heard of, but that was where I saw Godspeed You Black Emperor in 2009, and it was just a life-changing experience. I also really have a problem with this dredging up fossilized acts.
It's become a staple of Glastonbury every year now. Some of them are good though. Yeah. Barry Gibb did a great set. Lionel Richie did a good set, but some of them I'm not quite so sure.
Download 2019, I really enjoyed. The weather didn't help, but it put me off going to any major festival again ever, because it was just fossil after fossil. You had like Whitesnake and bloody Slash with Miles Kennedy. I don't want to see 60, 70-year-old musicians pretending they're 30 or 20. I want to see the new upcoming bands. Like, we're listening to all these new records coming out. Some of the bands that we're listening to would put on a better show than these 70-year-old headliners.
Yeah.
And the major festivals aren't giving them that platform, and if they are, they're sticking them on in the middle of the day when everyone's still in bed sleeping off their hangover from getting drunk watching Kiss. It just makes me not want to go to these things anymore, and they're never going to change it because they're trying to appeal to the people who can afford to go now, because people our age can't afford to go to 2 or 3 festivals. They might go to one small one because that's all we can afford to do. So the only people who can afford to go are people in their 60s who just wander around and moan about their bad back the whole time. Which is exactly what I do at festivals. I should add.
I'm not a massive festival guy myself. I've only been to a couple of local ones, and I went to Hot Farm Festival in Kent when that was running, only in 2011 to see Prince. That will get me to a festival. That's not going to happen anymore.
They might hologram him.
Oh, that would... We're going to come on to AI in a bit, but it's the same kind of conversation for me, because the moment they start doing holographic festival lineups is when, for me, all festivals need to be cancelled. I think there's something sacred about a live performance, and to replicate it using digital techniques, it fails to capture any of the magic. I would rather stay in and watch a DVD of ABBA perform one of the songs from 1979 than go and pay money to see somebody load in some code that makes a hologram that looks like the members of ABBA move. They did it with Tupac. It's never 100% accurate. It's the idea of the uncanny valley, isn't it? You can get as close as possible, but then you go beyond a certain point and it doesn't quite compute with your brain. Prince said he never wanted that to happen. He said something about it being demonic, but they'll go against his wishes. The estate, they will. Just as most artists, eventually money will coax whoever's handling the estate to make these holograms and to put them out there. I think it's a sad time. However, before we get too bogged down on the state of live music, there were some really good performances at Coachella, and there always are. And I think this is why, for me, it's still always positive to cover a festival, because there's always hidden gems. A band that you're pretty up on recently, Boy Genius, they appeared on as part of Muna's set. They did a new song, and the 3 members of Boy Genius, Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker and Lucy Dacus, they all came out and joined for a new song. So you get special moments like that. I enjoyed a set from Kate Trinada, the alternative R&B DJ. He's an electronica dance DJ, but his music's more alternative R&B. He did a song with Her, and I would have liked to have seen Her come out live, but because it's more of a DJ set, it's just playing the songs and him with his elaborate stage setup, and he can move. It's a good vibe. That was a good set. It certainly got me listening to an EP that he did in 2021. So you can discover artists through good sets at festivals. That's another thing, and you don't even have to leave your home for that one.
no, that's true. I love the wandering around a festival and watching loads of unsigned bands or bands I've never heard of, but I spend most of my time having to do that when I go to a festival early in the day, when I'm usually not necessarily in the mood for it.
As I say, I'm not a big festival goer, but even I know that it's never really about the headline acts. It's more about what you get up to during the day and who you see, all the magical moments that you didn't necessarily pay for. For instance, I was just watching an assortment of sets from this year's Coachella, and I saw Knocked Loose, a band that I wouldn't necessarily listen to. They're a hardcore metalcore band, essentially. They went down really well. They got this kind of barking chant thing, and the crowd went absolutely nuts for it, which was amazing. And even Billie Eilish was watching in the wings, and you can see her completely bopping along to it. So it's always the unexpected bands that seem to go down quite well, and the bands that you really pay the money for, the headline acts, always disappoint. Gorillaz, for instance, I watched some of the Gorillaz set from this year, and the highlight was De La Soul. It didn't even matter that Damon Albarn was on stage. I didn't even think that Gorillaz had Damon Albarn on stage. I thought it was supposed to be entirely virtual. And seeing Damon Albarn wearing a body warmer walking around the front of the stage whilst De La Soul are with him takes me out of the idea that they're a virtual band. We could have just seen Blur play this, and they could have played Feel Good Inc., and it would have been a better moment. I'm not sure Gorillaz works live for me. I've never bought into the idea of the virtual band. They seem to be getting less and less about the virtual band and more about, Damon Albarn and mates.
Yeah. Which is fine, but Gorillaz, I love the first album and nothing after that.
I love the first two albums, and I thought Plastic Beach, the third album, I thought that was really good. Not as good as the first two. And then it's been diminishing returns since then, to the point where their album earlier this year, Cracker Island, that's boring. I didn't enjoy that. There's a couple of songs on it. Silent Running, I think, is one of them, is a good tune. But other than that, beyond a couple of singles, I'm not going to revisit that album. It was 5.5 to 6 out of 10. Not great. So yeah, it never seems to be about the headliners. It's about who's making a name for themselves. Unfortunately, this year it seems to be Frank Ocean, and not for positive reasons. There's clearly something going on with him. I think he's suffering. It's not an injured ankle. His brother died recently, and he's obviously dealing with personal trauma. So it becomes difficult to blame him when there are all these contracts that are impossible to get out of. It must have been a very difficult decision. I don't think he went about it the right way. There was an ice rink that was meant to be part of his extravagant set, and they had to completely dismantle it moments before he was going on stage, just because he decided in the end that he couldn't be bothered with that part of his act. And you've got to remember that there's lots of people who put their heart and soul into these festivals, the stage crew and all the people that are doing their job to make sure everything runs smoothly. So your heart does go out to them a little bit when things like that do happen. But ultimately, Frank Ocean, he's a sensitive artist. I'm sure we'll get some good music out of it eventually. As fans, we should remember we shouldn't be entitled. These people don't have to give their health to put on a show.
I agree. I don't demand an artist to make art. That's not how it should be.
No.
We want them to put the best of themselves on paper. But in the recording sense, if you're not putting new music out, you're not making money on new music. So I can't go and buy something you haven't released. Whereas taking money for tickets to an event and putting on a non-show, it's just a bit crass. We should respect our artists, and I know that I'll go on about if you hadn't recorded when I had my rant about Smashing Pumpkins going downhill, but I'll have a moan about not liking Billy Corgan's new stuff, but I'm sure someone else does, and I'm not going to walk up to him in the street and go, Billy, your new album's shit.
No, you just do it virtually on here.
Yeah, just do it virtually on here instead.
And then we'll tweet him.
Yeah. But we have to separate art from artists and everything. Yeah. So we should show our artists respect for the music they're creating. But in return, I think if they're taking our money for tickets and doing what he did, I think there is a disrespect to your audience there. Now, I know that you're a festival and people don't pay for one artist. And if an artist has to drop out, they have to drop out. But he'd have been better off pulling the set than doing what he did, surely. Maybe if they didn't have time to replace him and there are people there who really want to see him, maybe it was worth doing. That's a debate for the comment section, isn't it?
I think that a large part of the reason why we're having this dialogue is because of how expensive Coachella tickets are.
Yeah.
Because it's such an expensive festival, people have saved for a long time and they've been paying to see Frank Ocean because he's a popular artist, and then when he doesn't deliver, I guess for me it's more about disappointment than it is about criticising him as an artist. You can criticise the performance, but as an artist, I know that he will not be pleased with his own performance, and I just hope that he puts it behind him in a way that he can make his art turn it into something positive. I think that a lot of my criticism about live music, it should be viewed as such. It's usually because I'm disappointed that an artist didn't do better and I want them to. We do have a right to criticise what's in front of us there, but I do think that some people do go beyond that, and it becomes more about being entitled to a good performance. We're never owed a good performance. It's good when we get one.
Yeah, we're owed effort, though, I think.
We did touch upon it earlier, but in the news also this week, we have seen some controversy surrounding the use of AI in music. So all over TikTok, there have been songs uploaded that have been made by AI, and they have arguably successfully copied the voices of the likes of Notorious B.I.G., Drake, The Weeknd. There's a Kanye one as well.
There's lots of Kanye.
With us always talking about music, Tom, what does this mean for the future of music?
It's just so freaking pointless, isn't it? If you're using AI as a tool to improve your vocal in the same way that you'd use auto-tune already exists. If you're using AI to copy someone else's voice, not necessarily with their permission to put it into your own song, what artistry is there in that? That just seems wrong. It seems fraudulent. And if you got their permission, maybe it'd be okay. But if you're using AI to write music, you're not writing music. The AI is. Is an AI capable of producing art? I think it probably is. But who do you credit for that?
It's difficult. I think we're going to go through a period similar to when sampling started becoming an issue in the early 90s. I think we're going to go through a period whereby we see a lot of lawsuits against people that have potentially made songs using intellectual property that may not belong to them, i.e. people's voices. I think it can also replicate instruments and things like that, so you might be able to get guitar played in a certain style eventually, and this is all going to change very quickly. But I think ultimately you need to let cooler heads prevail here. It's very easy to say, oh, this is going to change everything, music's doomed. It never really is, because I think most people that would want to use it are still music fans, and they want to use it so that it is simply a tool. If you're basing your entire output around the use of AI, that's not going to fly. But I think just like you can use auto-tune to enhance a song, there may be ways, I don't know them, I haven't thought of them yet, and I guess that this is what people are thinking about currently, but there will be ways that we can use AI to enhance music without compromising the creative methods behind it.
The way I can see AI work as a tool, for me, if I was to do it, use it as a cure for writer's block. Imagine you've got a style of music that you like or that you work in a lot, and the AI can give you a basis. For example, classical music, we've got theme and variations is a really common musical structure, and Rachmaninoff uses it a lot. Variations on a Theme by Paganini is one of his first piano works, and you take a theme written by somebody else and you extrapolate on that and you change it in different ways as you go along. If you were to do things like that with classical music, which is open source in some countries with copyright, for example, you'd get away with it. It's not open source, it's copyright free, when it copyright expired or whatever it is. It's difficult to do that with other people's songs, with the way record labels work, for example. But imagine if you got an AI to make something in the style of something else and then went on to extrapolate on that. I think that would be okay, probably.
The one use I can think of is, and it's not necessarily using the AI to record something, but let's say, for instance, an artist wanted to do a cover of a particular song, but they weren't really able to figure out how their voice fits within the current arrangement. For instance, if I wanted to get back into making songs again, don't worry guys, I'm not. I know that my voice has got some certain similarities, or at least I try to imitate certain similarities and vocal aspects from people like George Michael's range, Stevie Wonder's range. That kind of song would suit my range. If I have something outside of that, I could then produce a Stevie Wonder version of that song and then try and replicate the Stevie Wonder vocal using my own vocal tones. I have used AI in the last 2 days. I have asked ChatGPT to come up with some ideas for miniature YouTube videos, and it has then started to write them out, and I then put more information in and said, no, I would like more fact-based, more a bit of humour in it, and then it gives me the outline of a script. What I can then do is take that script, rewrite it in my own style and adapt where I need to, which allows me to work on more projects quicker because I can start each draft on an AI basis. So I think if you're using similar techniques like that within the music industry, it could really allow people to work more efficiently. It's more about the nature of how it helps us to work as opposed to the outcome that you get from the AI itself. I think it's more of a tool than a desired outcome.
Yeah, I think so. And also, having listened to several AI produced tracks, I mean, that Drake and The Weeknd one is awful, right? The one Kanye West doing Somebody to Love with somebody else.
It didn't sound like Kanye to me.
No, it didn't. It sounded very good, but it didn't sound like Kanye. And then there's Kanye doing Careless Whisper. That's up there.
I haven't heard that, and I don't want to ever hear that.
That does sound a bit more like Kanye. I can't say it was great.
You're similar to me in that you do like the artistry of music.
Yeah.
And when music is created by an AI, you are removing that aspect entirely. You're taking away any kind of emotional resonance. You're taking away personal meaning. You take away so much of the music that when I listen to these AI songs, I instantly don't even listen to them as music. It's almost like listening to a meme or something like that.
I occasionally watch videos from a chap called Nick Nocturnal, who's a guitarist on YouTube, and he does a thing where he's asking an AI to write lyrics, and the lyrics are awful cliches. And you listen to that Drake and The Weeknd song, which is the one where the AI's written the lyrics as well, hasn't it? The lyrics are fucking appalling.
Yeah, they sound like they got Anthony Kiedis to write them all.
Yeah. I think Anthony Kiedis...
Actually, no, he'd do a better job because at least he can use like really weird words that no one else would ever put in a song.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas a lot of the other AI stuff is getting other Kanye's vocals and putting them in other songs, or getting Drake's vocals and putting them in other songs, which is slightly different. So I think AI at the moment is not capable of writing a good song. If somebody can prove me wrong, I'd be happy to be proven wrong, and it'd be great if AI could write great music, but then you just credit it as the AI. But see, I've got no problem with who makes the music I listen to if I enjoy it. But on the other hand, most of the music I enjoy, there is a creative process behind, and I admire the effort that goes into it and the way they put the instrument together. And that requires a level of artistry that I'm not sure a level of human connection that I'm not sure an AI is capable of.
We'll get on to the final thing that we're here to discuss this evening. We've been a little bit scant on recent podcasts about mentioning what we have been listening to, and we all know that you listen to a lot of music, Tom. We're going to set aside 10 minutes or so here where we can just go through recommendations for our audience, because I know that you're chomping at the bit to hear what Tom's been listening to, what I've been listening to.
I'm sure they are.
There's been a lot out. We're a third of the way through the year. So what's been good? What's been going on in Tom's ears?
Literally just before this episode started, I decided to do a little go through of newer releases, and one that I'm going to have to bring up right now that has instantly grabbed me is a band called Liturgy 93696. It's an 80-minute album. I got to about 40 minutes before this episode came on, and I've got to say, it's probably going to make my album of the year list. It's like really avant-garde, insane black metal, which means Dan is going to hate it. But there's classical instrumentation, there's proper heavy guitar riffs. I hate to bring everything back to Godspeed You Black Emperor, but I find that when they do heavy, that affects me more than that sort of Metallica heavy. When I listen to heavy music, I want to feel it everywhere. I don't just want to...
In your bones.
Yeah, it's not just about the beat. It's about that sort of wash of sound. And that's what Godspeed and Deftones do it as well. And this album has that sort of feeling to it. I need to listen to the rest of it. As soon as this episode's finished, I'm going to blast it and really piss my neighbours off. It's brilliant. Then, on a completely different end of it, Boy Genius, the record is brilliant. I've always been a sucker for that sort of country-tinged indie rock ever since Isley in 2005 there with the Marvelous Things. It's a great... You don't know that album either, Dan. You're looking at me blankly. That's a great album as well. But Boy Genius are doing that. Julian Baker made my track of the year, 2020 or 2021 with Hardline. And so her in a supergroup with Phoebe Bridgers and Lucy Dacus is just, and 20% or $20, is it called, is just stomper. And there's another one on the same album. I'm rubbish at remembering track names these days because I listen to so much. I'm like, oh, I love this band. What's the track called? And then I'm like, I don't know what the track's called. The track is called Not Strong Enough. It's like one of the main singles. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was my favourite song on the album.
Yeah, it's a really good album. Other stuff we listen to, just mixing up yet again. We've got a sort of jazz breakbeat trio called Go Go Penguin. I've got tickets to see them in Bristol in September. I'm really looking forward to that. They are a drums, keyboards and double bass. And having that sort of dancey feel with jazz and just the sound of that double bass is just perfect. It's all instrumental. I've had that on at work and nobody's really complained about having that on in the background. So that's been good. So yeah, I really enjoyed that album. I should point out, I work in an area where a lot of my patients are a lot older. So if I decided to put on black metal, I think it would go down incredibly badly. Whereas Go Go Penguin, I'm allowed. Other albums, I was listening to Feist's new album today.
I didn't get time to check that out yet.
Feist is probably most famous for that Apple advert with 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, having just opened up her Spotify to remember that the name of the album is Multitudes, that track has 180 million listens.
Wow.
Yeah, but Multitudes was recorded mostly during the lockdown when she's adopted a daughter, and it's like there's only percussion on about half of it. There's a part of me that was listening to this Feist album, and this probably isn't an accurate analogy, but I was just thinking, because of what I remember, like Musha Boom and stuff like that is what I remember Feist doing, and as a member of Broken Social Scene. And so hearing this album almost feels a bit like when PJ Harvey did Let England Shake.
Oh yeah, in 2011.
Yeah, it was like everything's gone soft, but it's still got that experimental edge to it that made them great. And they managed to make a quiet album that is still has everything about them that made them good, but quieter and more introspective and softer overall tone, but still got the things about PJ Harvey and Let England Shake. Feist on this album, it's got everything about Feist that makes her great, but on a much more quiet album. Again, goes down really well at work. We've got to mention M83 because else Martin will have a fit.
I haven't listened to the new album yet. Fantasy?
Yeah, I listened to a couple of tracks and it sounds like an M83 album, which for me
that's going to be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I love everything they've done, to be fair.
There's 3 that I really like. There's Dead Cities, Red Seas and Lost Ghosts. Saturdays Equal Youth. And Hurry Up, We're Dreaming. I think those 3 albums are excellent.
Weirdly, I think my favourite of their albums is Before the Dawn Heals Us, which is the one in between Dead Cities, Red Seas.
Oh, okay.
And Saturdays
I haven't heard it.
Youth. Oh, you should. It's probably my favourite of their albums to date, or his albums to date, because they're now a solo project, but they were a band. It's a complicated history. So we had to mention that, and it's great. I'm trying to think what else I've been listening to. Oh, just before I came on, I listened to a lot of the new, not just before, but today, I listened to the new Enter Shikari album.
I was going to, but I put on one of their old songs from 2007 and hated it so much, I'm like, I can't go there today.
I really like Enter Shikari when they're on the heavy end. But the new album, they're going like synthy post-punk.
Right.
I think this is the year when heavy bands go post-punk. We had Paramore and now Enter Shikari are going to do it as well.
I could be on board with that, Enter Shikari, because that sounds more up my street.
Weirdly, I think you actually might.
Yeah, the further they go away from metalcore, the more I like them. I like their more recent stuff than their older stuff.
Oh, you really like
so
this
today at the gym, I almost listened to Go Go Penguin, or I almost listened to Enter Shikari, and in the end couldn't decide and went with just a shuffle instead.
Next album, it's an album you put me on to, and that's Wednesday.
Yes.
Female-fronted country rock.
Yeah. The album is called Rat Saw God, and as soon as track 1 finished, I had to message the group to let you know that you were going to love this, because it's shoegaze with alt rock and a country twang, and I was like, Tom's going to love this. It's got everything you want, all the boxes that you would like to be ticked by an album, ticked by this. And my favourite track on it is a track called Chosen to Deserve, which I think could be a really classic single if it gets some airplay, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think my favourite track on it is the really long one, which is Bull Believer, which is like 8.5 minutes. It's got a real sort of grungy feel in there.
Is that the second track on the album?
Yeah,
I think it might be.
On the album, yeah. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I could go into lots of obscure metal, like the new Wolves in Winter album, The Cool and Quiet. I really enjoyed that. There is a band called Zulu who released an album called A New Tomorrow, and it is absolutely batshit. It's a cross between really extreme hardcore punk, the sort of the stuff that Al loves, like Drain and the stuff that you hate, combined with hip hop and jazz.
Way more on board now.
It's absolutely. I played it to. So I had a different dental nurse in with me today who is really into her heavy music. And I played her this and just went, it's absolutely batshit. And she was like, I'm on board with this. There's hints of new metal. There's like new metal guitar.
This is going to be like Necrogoblicon all over again.
I think this might be this year's Necrogoblicon, might be Zulu. It's a very short album. All the songs are like a minute long. And it's just fantastic, but crazy. Just going through my playlist now of stuff I've listened to in the last couple of days, and I'm like, no, there is more good stuff since our last episode. I don't actually know how to pronounce it because they're a Japanese band called Paranul who've released an album called After the Magic that's like shoegaze dream pop that Martin will absolutely love. Hacken released an album called Fauna. They're a progressive metal band. I don't always love their stuff. In fact, it's the vocal slightly operatic vocal style in metal I just really don't like, but musically the band are incredible. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'll let Dan have a go.
There's been a number of releases this year, and we haven't really gone into them in any detail on the Cacophony Sessions podcast, so we'll just cover briefly what I've been listening to. I gave it another listen again recently, but Depeche Mode's new album is quite good. It grows on you a little bit. I really like Ghosts, the single. I think it's one of the best singles they've released in decades, but the album doesn't quite maintain that quality. It's probably not going to make my top 3. In fact, it won't be anywhere near, but if you're a fan of Depeche Mode, it's worth checking out their latest release. It's a tribute to Andy Fletcher, who passed away recently, so it's a little bit poignant, and it's written around his passing. He's involved in the recording of the album, but it's the first release they've had since he died. So worth listening to if you're a long-term fan, but it's not going to blow your mind if you're not. Fever Ray's Radical Romantic, that was a good album.
Yeah, I found it a bit disappointing. Sorry. It's good. But have you listened to her first album yet?
Not yet.
You need to. You'll then be as disappointed by her new album as I was.
Magdalena Bay, who actually brought back the guitar at Coachella with their set when they did Secrets Your Fire, which was one of my favourite tracks of 2021. A synth pop indie outfit. They're a duo, and they're back with a new 15-minute mini mix called Mini Mix Volume 3. It's quite energetic. It's very catchy, danceable, and if you like synth pop, I imagine as a fan of Churches, you might quite like this.
Probably.
I also did have, and you've already stolen my thunder as you so want to do, with Rat Saw God by Wednesday, which we've already covered. I think that might make my top 3, although it's going to be tough because there's a lot of good albums, such as 10,000 Gex by 100 Gex. Not everybody likes 100 Gex. They are crazy. It's like the musical equivalent of ADHD. It's just chorus to chorus, genre hopping all the way as they go. But this new album is so insanely catchy. There's a song called I Got My Tooth Removed, which is, as far as I can recall, the only song I know that's a ballad about going to the dentist that then switches up into a ska punk celebration in the chorus about having your tooth removed. There's also a song on there about a frog on a floor. None of the lyrics make any sense, but it's really fun, really catchy, and I believe that's my highest scoring album so far this year. I've scored it a 9 out of 10. It's likely to make the final 3. Another album that may end up in my final 3, I'm not sure yet. It is one of her best releases, and that is Lana Del Rey's Did You Know There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard. As with all of her other albums, it's an incredibly long, and it's something that you can't just listen to on a whim. It's always personal from Lana. She's talking about her usual themes of toxic relationships and trying to break the cycles that she's gone through in the past, and it's more of the same. It reminds me most of her 2019 album Norman fucking Rockwell, which may be her best album. It's in the same vein as that. If you like that, you'll like this. It may not quite be as good. There's a passage on there where it sounds like she's hid her phone in her pocket as she's recorded at a church. There's like a sermon on there, which is very strange, and I don't really understand the point in it. It's a bit of a low point. I also don't particularly like the fact that she remixed an old track to finish the album off, but there's tracks like A&W, which is a single, and Peppers, where she actually shifts from trip hop and chamber pop into more of a weird electronica hip hop thing. It's difficult to describe in the context of a Lana Del Rey album because it's all part of the journey, but if you do like Lana Del Rey, you'll like this album, and you might rank it as one of her best. I need to listen to it a few more times before I say whether it definitively is as good as that 2019 album, though. So we'll see. There's another album that's getting rave reviews that's come out as well. I'm not quite so hot on it as other people are, but I do quite like it. And we're specifically referring here to JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown with their album Scaring the Hose. It's an experimental hip-hop album which is full of insane samples and lots of noise. Nobody's got a flow like Danny Brown. He's a unique MC, and JPEG Mafia himself is a great producer and has good flow, so he's an interesting rapper himself. I really like JPEG Mafia's last album, LP. That was really good, and Danny Brown has released some interesting stuff in the last sort of 10 years. I think I may have gone in this with my expectations just a little bit too high, because after I listened to it, I don't really remember all that much from it, apart from some really weird moments. There's bits where they'll just have the sound of an iPhone notification, and you're like, was that my phone, or is that... It's been put in the song to mess with your head. Remember when you used to get songs off of LimeWire and Napster back in the day? You get all the way through the song and then it would say LimeWire MP3 or something like that. They've done that throughout this album. They put like weird samples that you think, oh, was that supposed to be there? And JPEG Mafia's discography is full of that. It's fun, but there is, other than maybe the single Scaring the Hose, there isn't much that I remember, so I have to go back to it. But as with Caroline Polachek's album earlier in the year, it's certainly possible that one of these albums that I've slept on will end up becoming something that I really enjoy.
Yes, Caroline Polachek. I was listening to the new Feist album and then at work, and then the Spotify goes on to random, and is the track called Butterfly Wings or something like that by Caroline Polachek came on. I was like, oh, that's really good. Oh, I need to go back to that album. It was Butterfly Net, that's it.
Butterfly Net, yeah. My favourite's Bunny as a Rider at the moment, but it does change. Sunset's a good song as well from that album.
She's playing in Bristol and it's sold out. I'm in Bristol in May. I tried to get us tickets and it's sold out. If anyone's got 2 tickets to Caroline Polachek in Bristol that they don't want, Dan and I'll have them.
Yeah, please hit us up at CAC Sessions Pod. Speaking of gigs that I just found out are happening, I just found out that Jessie Wet is playing. She's touring at the end of November. I'm quite tempted to try and get tickets to see that. She's got an album coming out on Friday, and I really liked the last record that she did, and most of her albums have had a degree of good songs on them, so I'll be listening to that. The other upcoming albums that are coming out this week as well that I'm quite excited for, different reason though for this one. I'm excited to listen to the new Smokey Robinson album simply because it's called Gasms. Like, why is Smokey Robinson called his album Gasms? It doesn't make any sense, but I'm on board. So yeah, I like Smokey Robinson from the 70s. I'll be interested to see what he sounds like now. As far as I'm aware, his voice hasn't actually changed that much. He can still sing from the limited performances I've heard of him over the last decade or so, but I'm going to listen to Gasms simply because I think it's a brilliantly stupid name and I like Smokey Robinson, so we'll probably update you how that goes on the next episode of the Cacophony Sessions.
Sleep Token's album comes out in May. Most of the tracks are already available online. I've been banging on about them for a few years, and all of a sudden they're now like the most exciting metal band around. And you know,
you liked them before they were cool, though.
I still like them now. I like them when they are cool. They're still great. They're blowing people's mind. Have you seen Justin Hawkins react to Sleep Token's?
I haven't seen his react to Sleep Token yet, but I am a big fan of Justin Hawkins' channel. If you are watching this, Justin, we've got an open seat here for you. We want you to defend Queen, because none of the rest of us are. And the last thing that I did just want to mention as well is that Foreign Voices have their EP coming out on Friday the 5th of May. You're on bass, Tom, I believe, and Martin's on guitar. So what we're going to do, check that out when it does come out, but when you listen for the new episode of the podcast, the Cacophony Sessions Goes Pop Again, which will be coming out within the next week or so, we will put that on at the end, so keep listening when that finishes, and you'll be able to hear the dulcet bass tones of Tom and the probably not dulcet, but the screeching guitar tones of Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there'll be a track off the new EP at the end of that episode, just as a preview for all of you. I hope you like it.
And as well as the records, make sure that you follow us on social media at CAC Sessions Pod. You can find us on Facebook at the Cacophony Sessions. Make sure you join our Patreon for full video episodes of the podcast. And you can, of course, find other content coming on the YouTube channel, Cacophony Sessions TV. Just a few of our thoughts on a couple of the headlines, what we've been listening to, and we'll be back in your ears when we'll be running down our opinions on the most recent chart hits in the UK. So stay tuned for that. All that remains to be said is make sure you stay funky.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Bye.